Hi everyone, welcome back. With me I have Juffrou Rachelle Bezuidenhout from Hoërskool Rustenburg and Leila Brits, Marley Kutse and me, Mofile Dube. And today Juffrou Rachelle will lead us through the lesson.
Hello guys, today we are doing a lesson on the themes in My Children, My Africa. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, can you see? Good. Okay, people. So the themes in My Children, My Africa, we will have a look at what exactly a theme is just now. But there are four main themes, and under these themes are some sub-themes that they can be divided in. We will come back to this column after we have done the whole slideshow and just check that we understand what each of these themes indicate. The first theme, communication versus violence. The generation gap, the effects of an unjust social system, and the meaning of a useful life. I just added some of the themes that can be, that have been asked under these themes, and you can add some more if you can think of any. Okay. Now the main themes in the book has a mnemonic that I use to remember it, namely Camdebou gets excellent marks. It stands for C, communication versus violence, G, generation gap, E, effects of an unjust social system, and M, meaning of a useful life. Okay. Now, before we get into what these themes actually mean, we need to know what a theme is. Can anyone tell me?
Ma'am, isn't it like the bigger picture of the story that basically almost like a frame structure in a way for the
Yes,
story that
yes. What
the
were you going to say, Layla?
Ma'am, I would say the same. I would say it is the bigger picture. That is what is important and what's being said throughout the whole story. What I want
Yes,
to emphasize actually what the story is about.
yes. The theme is almost like the message. Hey, that which, like the lesson that we take away from it. Okay, like in Shrek, for example, the theme was love and true love's form, whether love is only allowed when it's perfect or whether love between two imperfect individuals is actually allowed. Okay, that is the theme of Shrek, for example, or one of the themes. So a theme is an important idea that runs through the action of the play. Throughout the story, these themes can be traced in the characters' actions or words. Okay, there can be more than one theme. Sometimes there are many. Okay, you need to know in order to answer these themes. They don't ask you like they used to. They don't give you a passage and then say identify the theme. They ask you, they give you the theme and then they ask you how does it fit. Okay, describe how the theme fits this extract. So you need to know for 3 marks the meaning of the theme. What does communication versus violence mean? How it applies to the drama as a whole, and then give some examples from the drama. Okay, that is how to answer a question like this. So 3 steps. First of all, the meaning of the theme, how it applies to the drama, examples that, and for in order to give the examples, you need to know the drama very well. So the themes in My Children, My Africa, the first one. Remember the mnemonic, Camdebou gets excellent marks. The C stands for communication versus violence. Who wants to tell us what communication means? What does communication mean?
Ma'am, I think the communication is how they speak to each other and how they want to agree on topics and disagree on topics, and how they don't actually in this My Children, My Africa book, how they don't actually speak about what the real problem is, and they try to actually cover it by anything else?
Yes. Okay, so communication means to speak. But it's not only to speak, hey? It's any message that you send to another person that they decipher and get meaning from, that they understand. So communication can be your body language, written messages, what you don't say even, okay? And one of the themes is communication versus violence. How to get your message across, how to bring about change. What is the best way to do that? Is it through communication, through sending these messages, or is it through violence, through action, in other words? The meaning, there are different approaches to solving problems, talking through them or educating people about the impact, or violent ways. Okay. In the play, Mr. M, as part of the older generation, believes words can bring social and political change. Tommy, as part of the younger generation, believes action, violence will be the way to bring change, since words have not worked. For example, Mr. M believes the literature quiz will bring change. Tommy decides to quit the quiz and join the boycott. In what way does Mr. M believe the literature quiz will bring change?
I think he believes that for them to see different views of each other, it might help them to consider the method of what they believe and how to change could change maybe.
Okay. Yes. Yes. The literature quiz is something that Mr. M wants Isabel and Tommy to enter in together. A black boy and a white girl. And he wants people to see them working together. And that would implant the idea in their head that black and white are equal and can work together. Also, he thinks it will bring about change in the fact that he wants to get Tommy a scholarship to university through the literature quiz, and he believes that education will change Tommy's life. It will turn him into the kind of leader that the country needs. Also, you haven't read this yet at school, but at the end of the play, Mr. M holds a stone in one hand and a dictionary in the other in Act 2. And he asks which one is more powerful, that the dictionary contains every word in the English language, and the stone is only one word. So that is symbolic of communication, all the words in the language, or a stone used to throw out a window. Which one is more powerful? Okay, so would you be able to explain and identify the theme of communication versus violence from an extract? I hope so. The next one is the generation gap. Marley, would you like to take a guess as to what the generation gap means? What is a generation and what is a gap?
Ma'am, I would say it means that the different generations, in other words, the older people and the younger people have different point of views and they see things differently and react to them differently.
Yes, people, you live in a house with different generations. You are of a different generation than your parents. And sometimes there are clashes because your life views and your values differ. So in this drama, the theme of the generation gap also creates conflict. In the play, Mr. M represents the older generation. He's 57 years old and a teacher and more patient than the younger generation. He thinks that change will happen slowly over time. Whereas Tommy is 19 years old and represents the younger generation. He's impatient for change. He thinks it must be sped up. It must happen faster. For example, Mr. M and Tommy experience conflict because Mr. M tries to impose his values on Tommy, but Tommy has different ideas. Can anyone think of an example where Mr. M and Tommy clashed because of their generational gap?
Ma'am, I would say their political view about the apartheid and what's going on when Tommy wants to fight and Mr. M actually just wants to, you must step back and you must negotiate the problem, not fight with stones and everything like that.
Yes, definitely. And when Mr. M has this whole future mapped out for Tommy, that Tommy doesn't want. He doesn't want Mr. M's values and inputs into his future. Then, the third one, the effects of an unjust social system. What unjust social system are they talking about, Dube?
Remember about how like the education levels differ and how the socially how they're treated, like how the like at the township where Tommy is, how the township is very like dirty and poorly kept, and in terms of the education levels, like how Kamdabu receives good education and how where Tommy's school is Bantu education, a very weaker education system level compared to Kamdabu's education levels.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so an unjust social system. Unjust means unfair. Okay, there's no justice. It's unfair, the social system. And apartheid is a perfect example of a social system that is unjust because it treats citizens unequally. Okay. So the notes there say it's an unjust social system like apartheid, where white citizens had certain rights, freedoms, and privileges that black citizens did not have, like the right to vote, for example. Now, in the play, Isabel represents the white citizens and lives in the pretty town of Kamdabu and is receiving a good education. Tommy and Mr. M represent the black citizens and live in Brakwater, the ugly location with no electricity or running water. Okay, so these are the effects. The effect is that Isabel lives in a nice place with running water, gardens, old historic buildings that have been restored, and she has enough food, she has a good, bright future. Tommy and Mr. M, because they are black, live in an ugly place, they live in poverty, they have a bad educational system, and that is unfair. Hey. Tommy is receiving an inferior education called Bantu education. Examples, the descriptions of Kamdabu and Brakwater, how Isabel views school and her education versus how Tommy views his. How Isabel views hers, she loves school. She says maybe the cliche will be true, it will be the best years of her life. And how does Tommy view his education? He hates school. He views it as a trap, even though he is a very clever learner. Hey? Because his education will not be a key to the future, but a trap that keeps him down. Then the last main theme, the meaning of a useful life. What do you think that means? What is the meaning of a useful life?
I think it's one that has purpose and that was able to influence and help other people's lives.
Yes, exactly. We want our lives to have purpose and meaning. We don't like the thought that we are on earth arbitrarily and that we have no effect on anyone or anything. So our life must mean something. In the play, the theme is explored through the characters' lives. The black people's lives are wasted due to fewer opportunities. Mr. M says that when he looks on the streets, he sees many that are unemployed, many that have no future, many of his learners that will not have a bright future because their career options are so limited. Hey. It's a waste to have Tommy and Isabel as opponents. They must work together, and Mr. M hates waste. That is why he was thinking that having them battle each other is a waste. They must work together, like in the literature quiz. After his death, Isabel promises Mr. M that she will live a meaningful life. She intends to become a journalist and make a difference through her writing. Hey. Do you think Tommy's life is wasted by the fact that he joins the boycott instead of finishing his education? Who wants to answer that question for us?
Ma'am, I think in a way, he wasted his life because he focused on the political view of his education system and everything. When Mr. M guaranteed him he will have a bright future and that he will get a scholarship if he does the does the things Mr. M wants him to do.
Yes, okay, people, there are two ways of viewing this. Either Tommy is joining the struggle, which is a very worthwhile cause, so his life is not wasted. Or you can say, yes, Tommy could have achieved so much more. He could have meant so much more in the struggle if he had just finished his education and if he had just finished the literature quiz and gotten a scholarship. Hey, is Mr. M's life wasted? Did his life mean anything? That's also a difficult one to answer, hey, because in the end, did he really make a difference in students' lives? Tommy did not follow his advice, for example, his favorite student. But then again, you can argue that his life did influence Isabel's life. He changed her life forever and for the better, hey. And we don't know about the other learners whose lives he touched. Maybe he taught them about Confucius and that will make a difference in their lives. Hey, okay. So the meaning of a useful life, we must ask ourselves what it means in the context of the play, and then think of examples from the play. Then race. In My Children, My Africa, some ongoing struggles are exposed from the apartheid government in the 1980s, particularly related to education. Okay, apartheid was a system of segregation laws. Segregation means keeping people apart, that kept Black South Africans from the spaces and resources to which whites had privileged access. Two of the characters are Black and one is white, Isabel. The white character initially thinks that the Black characters will be grateful to her for visiting their school and will not equal her intelligence. However, she comes to love both Tommy and Mr. M and recognizes through them the difficulty and importance of the struggle against apartheid. Okay, so their race, because of their race, they have certain ideas and these ideas are challenged. Tommy and Mr. M are both proud of their race and their racial heritage. That's an important thing that we need to remember, hey? That Mr. M also does not like apartheid. He doesn't like the apartheid government. He fights it in his own way. He's still proud of being Black. He's not a traitor to his race, like Tommy at one point believes. They are both proud, they just show it in different ways. Isabel has certain privileges that Tommy doesn't because she's white and he is Black, like a good education, a peaceful environment, and so forth. Education. In South Africa at the time, shown in My Children, My Africa, schools for white and Black South Africans were completely segregated. You had white schools and Black schools. The three of you wouldn't be in a school together like you are in 1980s South Africa. This is shown in the play by Isabel and Tommy attending different schools, and the fact that Tommy did not receive an equal education to Isabel is shown by Isabel's shock and disgust at how simple and dull Tommy's school seems. However, the play shows that even Black South African is raised in these segregated areas had the intellect to succeed in academics and in life if the government would have allowed them the chance. Okay. The subject of teaching and teachers is also very important in the play. All the characters are either teachers or students, and the traditional relationship between teachers and students is shown through the characters Tommy and Mr. M. Mr. M keeps an emotionally distant relationship and often tells Isabel that he will tell Tommy what to do rather than ask him. Secretly, Mr. M tells Isabel that Tommy is his favorite student and that his biggest goal after all his years of teaching is for Tommy to succeed. And he fails in that goal. Hey, because of his own prejudices and his own unwillingness to change, and because he clings to tradition rather than changing. Tradition and culture, also very important. Specifically, Dube, can you tell me about the practice in Black culture for respect for your elders? How respect for your elders is viewed in your culture?
It's viewed in a way that you need to have respect. It's how can I say, it's basically you have to give them respect. It's you have to honor them, and basically that's basically it, ma'am. Like I really can't elaborate more than them deserving the respect.
Is it different in white cultures, do you think? Do your white friends treat their parents differently than you treat your parents, for example?
In terms of parents and in conflict resolution, most possibly yes, ma'am. But in terms of like giving respect, no, it's not so widely different.
Yes. You would probably be more hesitant to talk back to your parents than many of your white friends would be. Hey. Okay, tradition and culture. Tradition is used to describe beliefs and behaviors that are passed from generation to generation, while culture is used to describe the characteristics of a certain society at a particular point in time. Okay, so tradition, what comes from your ancestors, culture, what is going on now at this point in time. In African tradition and culture, elders are respected by younger members of society. People, that doesn't mean that it's not the same in white culture, in white English or Afrikaans culture. Of course, there's respect for elders. It's just respect is shown in a more informal way. Okay, respect is shown more formally in African culture. That is why Mr. M believes Tommy will follow his will unquestioningly. When he says Tommy will enter the literature quiz, Tommy does so. Hey, yet in the end, Tommy defies Mr. M's will. We know that Tommy is unhappy with Mr. M. Mr. M doesn't know it himself. In the debate, Tommy argues that Africans should stick to their traditions and heritage. It's ironic because later he rejects these traditions for change. Okay, Isabel believes we should be able to change with the times. She easily accepts change in her views towards Black people and Black culture. One day she was still this protected little white girl, only viewing Black people in relation to her own identity, and literally the next day after the debate, she views them completely differently in their own identity, as their own culture, their own people. Friendship. People, in order to have friendship, there must be equality. Do you agree with me? Can you really be friends with someone you don't consider an equal?
No, ma'am, I don't think so, because when you're not equal with someone, you can't, it feels like authority towards one has authority more than the other, and so then they can't discuss things that friends usually would discuss or interact like that.
Marley, even though I like you a lot, and even though we spend time together, we are not friends. Hey, because we are not equal. I am the teacher and you are the student. So we do not have a relationship of equals, so probably you won't discuss all your problems with me and I won't discuss all mine with you. Hey, we will probably discuss academic work, mostly. So friendship implies equality. Isabel and Tommy become friends, even though Isabel later questions that friendship. A friendship even develops between Isabel and Mr. M. They are more equal than Mr. M and Tommy. Mr. M created that rift between him and Tommy, their inability to be friends, by insisting upon the generational difference. Hey, as their relationship is not one of equals. Mr. M is Tommy's student. He's not, or Mr. M is Tommy's teacher. He's not Isabel's teacher. Hey, therefore they can be equals. They can be friends. Mr. M sees himself as Tommy's elder and therefore has power over him. Isabel and Tommy's friendship is tested by gender, race, lifestyle, and background differences. Good friends should be honest and loyal and express their true feelings. Do they? Now, people, you haven't read up to the end of the play, but in the end, Isabel and Tommy's friendship is basically ruined by the fact that he quits the literature quiz and says that they can't really be friends because of their different races, and his comrades will frown upon their friendship. It's redeemed a little bit at the end when he tells her about Mr. M's death, but then he goes on to live his life and she goes on to live hers. Okay, so their friendship is tested by these things, and you have to decide whether it survives or not. Okay, people, that is the end of our lesson today. Thank you for participating, and thank you for participating in all the lessons. I had so much fun teaching you. Are there any questions? Not. Okay, great.